Sometimes we just need other people to save us from ourselves, right? Because we aren't doing the right thing, even though they know that that's not the kind of person we are, that we want to do the right thing, but we're letting our emotions get control of us, and we're about to do something that we don't want to do. And they know that. And so it's always nice when we have people that love us enough to say, whoa, whoa, wait just a minute. You don't want to do that. It's not going to turn out good for you. You're going to feel bad about it later. And so let's just stop for a minute and think this through, do something different, right? It's always good to have people like that. And in our lesson today, God does this for David because he is about to do something that he would regret if he were to go through with it. But he also sends a woman to him to stop him. And so this woman is trying to save not only David from himself, but also her husband from himself. So this is a calm-headed woman in the middle of two hot-headed men. And Abigail's husband isn't even worth talking to, and so she has to take care of the whole instance herself. But David listens to Abigail. He is thankful that she has stopped him before he does something stupid. And obviously, that's the kind of person that we want to be, that listens to people that love us and that are trying to help us before we make a huge mistake. And so we begin chapter 25 with just the very first verse telling us that Samuel, the prophet, has died. And remember that he was first a priest, and then he became a judge and a prophet of the people. And so everyone in the whole nation loved Samuel, and he was also the one who anointed both Saul and David to be king of Israel. And so, even though the nation is divided at this moment over Saul and David, they are not divided over Samuel. Everyone loves Samuel. And so the whole nation comes together, even Saul and David, to mourn the death of Samuel and to bury him. And so the first verse of chapter 25 tells us that Samuel died and they buried him in Ramah, which was his hometown. And then after that, Saul and David went back to, doing what they were doing. Saul went back to his house, and David went back to hiding from him. And it tells us that David went to the wilderness of Paran, which is in the northeastern part of the Sinai Peninsula. So this is where he's hiding now. And he hears that there is a rich man in the town of Moan that is shearing his sheep in the nearby town of Carmel. And so this is basically like a big town, and then the rural place where he would be able to work would be Carmel. And this man had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. So he was very rich. And David has encountered his shepherds in the fields, and he has, taken them into his protection. And so it tells us that none of these men lost any sheep while David was protecting them. And so he hears that Nabal, that's this man's name, he is in Carmel shearing his sheep. And so he sends 10 of his messengers to Nabal to wish him peace, tell him what he's been doing for his shepherds, and then request that Nabal give him some food for his feast days. And so he sends the 10 men to Nabal, and they address him and say, "Peace be to you, peace be to your family, and peace be to everything that you have." And then they explain, "Hey, we encountered your shepherds in the fields, and my master, David, has been protecting them this whole time. And they haven't lost any sheep since they came under our protection. And we were wondering if maybe in return for the protection that we've given to you, the kindness that we've given to your shepherds, that you would please give us any food that you may have to spare so that we can celebrate our feast days." And Nabal is like, "No, David, which is a lie because everybody knows David. David is the warrior that's been fighting on their behalf all of this time. So he knows who David is, but he's like, I don't care. I almost feel betrayed by my shepherds for them, going to someone else to protect them. And so if they want to let David protect them, fine. But I'm not feeding you. I didn't ask you for any of this. And I don't even know your men. Why would I give them food? And so the 10 messengers go back and report this to David, and David is furious. He's like, I can't believe that I did, such a nice thing to him, and he can't even give us any food to enjoy our feast days. And so he gets 400 of his men, and they go out to attack um, Nabal, and he leaves 200 of his men there with the supplies. Now, in the meantime, one of Nabal's servants has run to Abigail and told her everything that happened. And he's like, hey, David's men came to Nabal and he was rude to them. And now I fear that our lives are in danger. And this man was good to us. He protected us. It was like a wall around us as long as we were with him. And all they asked was, one thing from Nabal, and Nabal was rude to them. And now our life is probably in danger. And so think about if there's anything that you can do for us because things are about to get bad. And Abigail doesn't even seem remotely surprised that her husband has been like this. The servant said, I didn't go to him because he's not going to listen anyway. And so it seems as though everyone knows that Nabal is a difficult man to deal with. And so she sees no reason to go to Nabal and try to reason with him. Neither does the servant. She also knows that time is of the essence. And so she decides, I'm just going to take care of this myself and then I'll deal with Nabal later. I've got to save our, lives at this moment. And so she makes him 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 dressed sheep, 5 seahs of grain, 100 clusters of raisins, and 200 fig cakes. This is all of the food that Abigail prepares for David. And then she puts it all on donkeys, sends the messengers ahead of her so that they will get to David before David gets to Nabal. And then she says, I'm hurrying behind because I want to speak to David myself. Now, in verse 21, it tells us that what David's thinking as he is about to attack Nabal. And he says, surely in vain I've protected all that this fellow has in the wilderness, so that nothing has been missing from all that belongs to him. And he has repaid me evil for good. May God do so and more also to the enemies of David if I leave one of the males that belongs to him alive by morning. And so, does this sound familiar that he is saying that Nabal has repaid evil for good? This happened to him with Saul, right? Saul was repaying David's good for evil. And when Saul did this to David, David repaid his evil with good. But when Nabal is doing it to him, he's like, that's enough. I am not going to put up with this anymore. I keep treating people well and they treat me bad in return. And this guy is not getting away with it. And so he sets out to fight Nabal, and Abigail sets out to stop him. And it says that she does meet him on his way to kill Nabal. And she immediately gets down from her donkey and bows down before him. And she does this first because she knows that her husband has disrespected David. And she wants David to know before she even speaks to him that she is not going to disrespect him and that she honors him instead. She's trying to, relay this right off the bat, that she has honor for him, even though her husband has disrespected him. And then when she begins talking to him, she takes full responsibility for everything that her husband's done. She's like, not even making excuses for him. She's like, I heard what my husband did, and I'm so very sorry for it. But I want you to know I didn't know anything about it. If I would have known what your servants requested, I would have given it to you. She says, my husband is a foolish man, just as his name suggests. So apparently Nabal means fool. And she's like, he is. He is not smart by doing this to you, and I'm very sorry. And then in verse 26, it says, now therefore, this is what Abigail says to him. Now therefore, my Lord, as the Lord lives and as your soul lives, since the Lord has held you back from coming to do bloodshed and from avenging yourself with your own hand, now then let your enemies and those who seek harm for my Lord be as Nabal. Now this present which your maidservant has brought to you, let it be given to the young men who follow you. Please forgive the trespass of your servant. For the Lord will certainly make you an enduring house, because you fight the battles of the Lord, and evil is not found in you throughout your days. Yet a man is risen up to pursue you and seek your life, but your life shall be bound in the bundle of the living with the Lord your God. And the lives of your enemies he shall sling out as from the pocket of a sling. It shall come to pass, when the Lord has done for my Lord, according to all the good that has been spoken concerning you, and has appointed you ruler over Israel, that this will be no grief to you, nor offense of heart to you, either that you have shed blood without cause, or that you have avenged yourself. And when the Lord has dealt well with you, then remember me. So she's also telling David, my husband may have acted as if he doesn't know who you are, but I know exactly who you are. You are the warrior who has been fighting for us on God's behalf. And you have also been relying on God to fight for you, because Saul has been trying to kill you and you've been trusting in God all of this time. And so I'm encouraging you to continue that. I want you to rise above Nabal's evil, just as you have been rising above Saul's evil. Don't let him make you stoop to his level, because God is going to give you the throne one day. And I don't want you to approach the throne with innocent blood on your hands, or it being said of you that you didn't trust God enough to take care of you, and that you took matters into your own hands and avenged yourself. I don't want you to be feeling, guilty for all that you have done in this matter. And so don't let him get to you. That's not the kind of man that you are. And so, even though David had sworn to kill Nabal, this is his response to Abigail. This is verse 32, and it says, blessed is the Lord God of Israel, who sent you to me this day to meet me. Blessed is your advice, and blessed are you, because you've kept me this day from coming to bloodshed and from avenging myself with my own hand. For indeed, as the Lord God of Israel lives, who has kept me back from hurting you, unless you had hurried and come to meet me, surely by morning light no males would have been left to Nabal. And so David received from her hand what she had brought to him, and he said, go up in peace to your house. See, I have heeded your voice, and I have respected your person. And so Abigail has convinced David that he does not need to return Nabal's evil for evil. He needs to do what he's been doing with Saul and trust that God is the one that's going to take care of him, that he doesn't need to get revenge from his enemies, because God is going to do that for him. And so she has appealed to the kind of man that she believes he is. And it's convinced David. David's like, you're right. That's not the kind of man I am. Remember, that's what we talked about last week, is that the reason that David did not return Saul's evil for evil is not because Saul didn't deserve it, but because David didn't want to be that kind of person. And so Abigail is coming to him and she's saying, that isn't the person you are. You are not an evil person. Nabal is, but it's not your job to deal with him. Same as with Saul. And so I don't want you to approach the throne with a guilty conscience, innocent blood on your hands, not trusting God to take care of you, but doing it yourself. And David says, thank you. You're right. That is exactly the kind of person that I want to be, exactly the person that I really am. And I was just letting Nabal get the better of me. And so I'm not going to do this. I want you to go home and, leave in peace. I'm not going to kill anyone. But I would have if you wouldn't have stopped me. So thanks be to you for stopping me, and thanks be to God for sending you to me. And so then it tells us that Abigail gets home and finds out that Nabal has had this great feast. They said the feast of a king. And so, he obviously had plenty of food to give to David, but he is having this feast and he is totally drunk at this moment. And so she's like, yeah, this is not a good time to tell him everything that has happened. And so she doesn't say anything to him about it at all that evening. And she waits until the next day when she sees that he's sober. And then she tells him everything that has happened. And this is what it says in verse 37, that his heart died within him and he became like stone. And then he died 10 days later. And so he had a paralyzing stroke, a stroke that turned his body to stone, made it where he couldn't move anymore. And then he died 10 days later. Of the shock of this, of how close he was to death, we don't really know. But what we do know is that God caused this to happen. God is the one who, repaid Nabal's evil. And David didn't have to. And so it says, when David found this out, he blessed the Lord for repaying his, enemy. And so in verse 32, it says, blessed be the Lord who has pleaded the cause of my reproach from the hand of Nabal and has kept his servant from evil. For the Lord has returned the wicked on Nabal on his own head. So God returned his evil, and David is thanking him. David is so glad that he did not do this thing and that God has rescued him. And then it says, not only is he thankful to God, but he's thankful to Abigail because both of them have saved him from himself. And since Abigail is without a husband now, he sends after her and asks her to be his wife. And she's honored and she says, yes, I will definitely be his wife. And it says she takes 5 maidservants with her, goes with his messengers, and becomes David's wife. Now, in the meantime, remember that David had a wife named Michal, but that was Saul's daughter. And when David fled from Saul, Saul gave Michal to another man in marriage. And so he has lost her. And in the meantime, before he even knew about Abigail, he married another woman from Jezreel. And so now he has 2 wives, this woman from Jezreel and Abigail, and he has lost Michal.